Hey, what's up, everybody? It looks like we're getting a little spike here today. So, we can't get too excited yet. Remember, we've been talking about, we're kind of just spiking, dumping, spiking, dumping, and it's just continuing spike, dump, spike. So, until this range breaks, that's what we want to see, right? That's the whole point. That's what we want to see. So, it could continue to kind of chop around in here, right? So we'll circle back to XRP and we'll get to it, but it's looking a lot better, and it actually looks like we could be breaking out fairly soon. The reason why I believe that is because we had the deviation right down here, right? So when you get that deviation, it's like a liquidity grab, and then the price comes back, and then if it touches the resistance of this here, right, like it did the other day, but then it dumped all the way back down. But look, you can see we had support come in right about there, and you can see now we're getting close to it. So we could be getting close. This could turn into like an A, B, a C, and then see something like that, right? It's kind of like maybe 3 waves up, you get 3 waves down, and then a continuation. So, or you can even say like a 1-2. I don't like that as a 1-2, but it potentially will work. But let's zoom out here. So when we zoom out, the only issue, well, so one of the issues is we got to break above the supply line right here. This is the goal. This is what we got to do, right? And I really think we're at the verge, because here's the thing. There's 2 ways you can draw the line. One of them touching this one here, right? The other one not touching it, but having more of a hit on this one, right? So what I'll do to please both is I'll just put 2 of them here. So there we go. So basically you can see we're actually right in between the 2 downward resistance line, right? So this is extremely important. I mean, this is the line we got to break, or because, the price is moving through time, right? It's moving through time, but it's also moving down through price, right? So when the time is meeting up with the supply, something's got to give, right? Something's going to break. Either this supply line is going to be so strong that it breaks our already weakened resistance, because look how many touches we hit, right? And then you get a catastrophe, right? You get a breakdown, or the support is so strong that when it meets up with the supply and it gets squeezed, you can see it's a tight wedge right in here. That's when we can break to the upside. So we're right at that point where we should see a big move either way. Now, I still believe that we're going to break to the upside, and I've said many times why I believe that, right? Number one is, well, the macro, but in no particular order. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Let's get 5. I mean, it's pretty common sense, right? And another reason why I think we're going to break to the upside is because when we look at, kind of where we're at here, we're right at the verge of breaking out of a 7+ year range, right? Now, yesterday definitely was a little bearish. And now this is XRP. Now, some of these alts, I don't know, like if Bitcoin breaks out, and we'll jump into that later. But the big question is are those alts going to give us a significant run, or is it just going to be like a weak retracement and then more bear market until Bitcoin gets out of its own bear market, right? Because if Bitcoin is near the end and the alts are nowhere near the retracement levels, remember, the alts still have to go through the retracement levels. We'll jump into all of that stuff, so stick around. But XRP is right at the verge of going into price discovery. This is a 7+ year base, right? This is sideways, 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 sideways. That's exactly what you want for a big breakout to the upside, because that's exactly what happened before, right? I mean, this is literally a carbon copy of what we see today, except it is more than twice the size, right? So does that mean we're going to get twice the size of the rally? I mean, it's possible, but in percentage terms, I don't think so, right? But in price terms, yes, we should. So, other than that, you can see, we got kind of a double bottom there. Or no, that's not a double bottom, my bad. We got a bottom here, right? And then we have higher low, right? So you could see we're ascending here. And then meanwhile, we have this resistance. So you can even look at it kind of like a descending triangle, which leads me into the bearish idea, right? Because we can still, Bitcoin could be over with. And if it is over with, but we still have to have an alt season later on, then that could mean that we are in some type of super cycle where Bitcoin had gone up so significantly, right? Because it's been going up since 23. It's been going up 2.5 years. So we'll jump into that, but actually let's look at Bitcoin real quick, and we're gonna kind of bounce around a little bit, but essentially Bitcoin is looking way better than it was yesterday. Actually, no. Bitcoin has been looking good. So Bitcoin is actually the one that does look good on the smaller time frames. On the larger time frames, it's a little bit worrisome because, again, you have the beginning of 2023, and we've been going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for all of 23, right? All of 24 and half of 25. That's 2.5 years. Bitcoin's been going up, right? So that is expending our time ammunition for the alts to get their ass moving. Move it. You know, that movie, Full Metal Jacket. Oh, that movie's so funny. So it's kind of like the drill sergeant yelling at the alts. Move it. You are, I'm not going to say what he says, but it's hilarious. But anyway, you have a situation now. If we pull up total 3, or if we pull up, let's just take an altcoin here. Like, let's look at ADA, right? So look at the difference between Bitcoin and ADA. Now, ADA also has been kind of going up since 2023 too, but it's kind of been creeping up. So ADA is kind of, a little bit of a bad example, but you can see Bitcoin had already broken above its $69,000 top, and it's sitting way the hell up here at over 100K, if I can draw it up there, right there. So how is it that ADA, or let's say Bitcoin, obviously is way up here, it broke above it, 69K top, it has another wave to go. Does that wave equal ADA breaking all the way past its high, then past the all-time high, then continuing going? I mean, it's going to take a lot of juice. Now, the thing about the altcoins is we know from history that they don't need a lot of time, right? Like, really, they only need about 4 weeks, and they can rip and roar. The issue, though, is that is kind of out of price discovery. Now, when you're battling, right, when you bottom here and you have all the retracement levels, that takes more time to get through those than, let's say, we went up, up to here, 250%, right? Well, that 250% is going to be harder to get through versus us being already at all-time highs and then going up 200 or 300 or even 400 or 500%, right? It's going to be easier. Why? Because you're in price discovery. You're I don't say you don't have any resistance, you do, but it's a lot cleaner, right? And then also there's so much FUD, right? Around everything. because people are just scratching their heads. They don't know what to make, because one day they'll look at the news, everything's bad. The next day, everything's good. So people are like, I don't know, is it good? Is it bad? What should we think? Right? Because simultaneously you have a lot of bad news, right? But then also you have a lot of good news. So, and then also, and a lot of it had to do with the macro stuff, like inflation and interest rates and quantitative tightening and all of that stuff. Basically the way, because when you look at crypto, everything is correlated to some extent, right? But how could crypto number one and crypto number two be so correlated when they're so different from each other? Like, one of them is a gaming NFT type of token. Another one is like a layer one token, and they're basically kind of correlated with each other. So how is that possible when they're doing different business? Because it mostly has to do with how liquidity rolls and flows throughout the globe, right? That's why the stock market is somewhat correlated with crypto, is somewhat correlated with, other assets, right? Because it's not necessary. Like when we had COVID, right? When we had C-19, which was right here, we had a big crash. Now everything crashed, right? Not just, they call it a pan sell-off, right? Everything crashed. Crypto, stocks, gold, silver, everything. Gas, oil, all of it, right? So how can everything crash at once? Because it was a global event. Because global, and we're living in a global event right now, because liquidity is it's just the way liquidity flows, right? Now, when you have a normal situation, like a normal president, a normal economy, a normal business cycle, a normal stock market, then that's when you get charts that sort of decouple from one another and strictly go up and down based on the utility aspect, the usability. Because if Amazon doesn't have any sales, right? Let's say they don't make any money, then their earnings come out, then Amazon crashes. But Walmart has amazing earnings and they go up. But what if both of them had, or one of them had bad earnings and one of them had good earnings, but both of them still went down? You see what I mean? So that could totally happen, right? So usually the indicators, like the earnings and how well the company or crypto is doing, dictates the price. But what trumps that is the macro, right? Just like C-19 trumped everything. Everything crashed. So that's why markets are difficult to gauge, because you got to understand the environment we're in, right? So anyway, I thought I would rant on a little bit. So there's my rant for today. So let's look at Bitcoin again, and we'll circle back to XRP. We're going to look at Theta. By the way, we got a green day today. Look at that. 10%. Look at that. 10% for Theta. Look at that. And I'm very upset because last night I put an order in and only half of it got filled. It's okay though. Yeah, we got a big day today. Look at that. 10%, 9%, So definitely a good day. And that, it's volatile, right? Yesterday we had the day before we had a big pump. Then yesterday we had a big ass dump. And now yesterday we have a big pump again. So when you have this crazy swing in volatility, that means somebody threw a rock in a pool. And not just a rock, but like a mountain. Imagine getting a mountain and throwing it in the ocean. Think how big of a splash you're going to make, right? So that's kind of what's going on here. Now, what could that be, right? Well, guess what? I forgot to mention yesterday that we just had I did mention we had the monthly close, we had the quarterly close, right? But yesterday we had a big dump. Why is that? Because check it out. I'm going to show you, and I should have explained this yesterday. This is why, right here. So here's the quarterly close, right here. All right. No, I don't want that. Where's my arrow at? Right there. So here's the quarterly close. Okay, so then the candle opened, right? And that was Monday. And then people expect it to go up. But I forgot to mention, Yesterday, look at, we dumped. Why did we dump? Because we needed the tail. You see that tail right there? See that tail? That tail is so important, right? Because it comes down, it tests the waters of the previous quarter to confirm that the new sort of quarterly candle can be confident in its ability to keep going up, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't. But look over here. See over here? You have a tail, right? You have a tail, right? Look at this one. You had a tail, right? So they all have tails, meaning when the quarterly candle closes, we should expect a dump below the close at some point in that quarter. Now, yesterday was the first day of that quarter, or was it yesterday? What's today? Today, the second. So yeah, so yesterday was the first day of that quarter. So you can see all the little tails. Now, when you're dealing with a quarterly candle, a lot of times you do have tails. Now look at over here. You had no tail. You had no tail right there. So there is situations where that could happen. Now, you did have a tail over here, but that was actually the bottom of the cycle, right? So a lot of these have little tails. And you go, oh, well, they're tiny, tiny, tiny tails. Well, no, this is a big tail, guys. Look at this tail. Watch this. If I take it from here and I go all the way down, right, that's about 3.5, almost 4%, right? So it's not extremely significant, but let's see how much this tail was. And remember, if Bitcoin is 3 to 4%, that means the alts are going to be like 8, 9, 10%, right? So this tail, it should be less. Yeah, it's only like not even 2%. So let's look zoomed in here. All right, now let's get to the real part, the analysis. It only took 17 minutes. So we have a flat, right? We have an impulse, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So then we have a three-wave pullback. We've been talking about this for a long time. But if we look closely at this three-wave pullback, it's getting extremely bullish. Why? Because of, well, first of all, there's your A. Let's just do this. There's your B, right? And, or actually, no, you know what? It's actually like this. You get 3 down. There's your W. You get 3 up. That's a flat. There's your X. You get 3 back down. There's your Y. Okay? So it's not an ABC. It's really a WXY. Because you only have 3 waves in Y in the last leg. Okay, so that is confirmed. So you have an impulse up, you have a 3-wave move down. So then now what? So from here, a lot of things could happen. We could have shot up here, got rejected, and continued going down, right? That didn't happen. What happened? We shot all the way up, right? We had another impulse, so checkmate, right? We have an impulse. So then what do you look for after that? A 3-wave correction. That's exactly what we got, right? Yesterday, and that was yesterday's video. So here's yesterday's video right here, right? And we were just talking about this literally, right? So, so your C leg, and this is actually chain link, and we'll look at chain link and we'll revisit that. But there you go. Now, did I know it was going to reverse today, like very quickly? Well, I did put some longs in yesterday after being out, because I figured, if you look at this, right, when you get red, statistically speaking, and then also not only that, but you created a flat in the process, typically you're going to get some kind of a bounce. Now, I played a trade for a bounce, but I wasn't certain if we were going to get a bounce and then a 3-wave pullback and then another wave, No, we went straight up, right? So that's actually really, really bullish. So if we zoom in further, this is very bullish here. This looks, you can say this is 1, 2, right? Or you can say this is 1, 2, and this is 3, this is 4, this is 5. But anyway, this is a beautiful flat right there. Look at that. A, B, C. Perfect. Right? And then now we're impulsing. So this is a very good sign. So essentially, let me see if this works here. You could have literally an inverse head and shoulders here, and I never thought about it like that. But basically, you have a shoulder, you have a head, and then you kind of have like a double shoulder here, or just a shoulder. So what would be the measured move of this inverse head and shoulders? Well, I'm not going to measure it from down there. I'm actually going to measure it from the weekly order block, which is going to be right here. And then I'm going to go up because it's going to give you a more conservative, more rounded approach. So that's, wait a minute. I didn't want to measure that. What I wanted to do was take a trend line. I don't know why that's still there. There we go, trend line. And let's put this right there. And then we're going to take that trend line and we're going to put it right there. So that, and then what we're going to do is take this trend line and we're going to move it just like that. And then we're going to click it and it's going to tell us the price. So between 150, so basically like 155K. So that's pretty damn good. I didn't think, I wouldn't think Bitcoin would go that high. I'm more in the camp of maybe 135, 140, but 150, I mean, that's pretty good, you know. So we'll see how that plays out. But if we can also do this, right? We could take a trend-based fib extension, go from here, go all the way down. And do we have confluence? Not really. I mean, a little bit. You got the 1.414 right in the same area. You got the 1618 just above it. So we can also measure it like this. But I don't think this is going to be, let me see here. Let me put that right there. And then I'm going to put this there. And there we go. So yeah, look at that. That's even better confluence. Look at that. The line is right between both of them. So that would be my target, guys, right there for Bitcoin. Now, that is more of a main target, right? Now, a more conservative target would be the 1-to-1, which is 135. So let's say that Bitcoin goes all the way up to 135. That's only 25%. Let's say it goes up to the black line. That's 40%. That's not really a lot. But when you're talking a multi-trillion-dollar asset, that's a lot. It's a lot, right? 40%. So if Bitcoin goes up 40%, then that means the altcoins can go up maybe 4 times that amount, right? So you're looking at some pretty juicy numbers. So that's kind of my analysis on Bitcoin. That's what I'm thinking here. Now, what is the problem? The problem is, you know, when I brought this up in the bearish argument, right? Because there's always a bullish argument. You got to entertain both arguments, right? Just because you entertain it doesn't necessarily mean that's your main idea. But the problem is that when you go like to the monthly chart, or actually the monthly looks bullish. It actually looks pretty bullish. I mean, yeah, that definitely looks bullish. But when we go, let's go back to the weekly. So the issue is, now before we didn't have this big spike, but before, right, we broke above and we were basically, you came up and you back tested it, right? But a lot of times you can have a liquidity gap, like right here. I'll flip the chart upside down. See how you went up, right? And then you bottomed, and then you went all the way up, and you broke the top, right? And then you corrected, and what happened? You came all the way back down. See, that was what I was afraid that could happen, that we broke the top, and we're going to get rejected, and then we come down. Now, that was definitely a big idea. It wasn't the main idea because it didn't correlate with XRP. XRP was much more clear. Another reason is you had already 5 waves, right? And then you have 6 and 7, but I don't think 7 is done. I think 7 needs to get up here. So I think that's where we're going. I think that when you look at this, it looks like it matches up, right? Every wave is kind of in the same degree, right? The third wave being the biggest. Now you could argue that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it's kind of a weird thing here. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all of that is 5. So that's how I would look at it. So Bitcoin is definitely bullish. And I don't own any well, I own some, but I'm not really in the Bitcoin camp right now because I just don't get out of bed for 40%. I mean, I'm sorry. That's just too hard for me to do. Okay, let's look at Theta first. So Theta looks fantastic, guys. It looks like it is ready. It looks primed. It looks like, when I say primed, I mean it bottomed. I think it's bottomed here because, again, let's go to the big boy Theta chart. Here we go. So really quick, and this just goes for a lot of altcoins, right? You had a sideways, right, base here. You had a massive impulse, one of the biggest impulses in crypto. It went from pennies to like $16. That's a lot. And you had your bear market. And if you take this whole wave and you cut it in half, that's exactly where we went to. So we know that it's pretty much, it met the requirement, right? And then what happened was you went up in 3 waves here. But that 3 waves, in my opinion now, is part of a bigger 3-wave move here. Right? So because you have 5. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there's your A, right? And this is a flat, and that's a B. But I think it's not just any B, it's part of a bigger B, right? Because now you have 3 waves back down, right? So you had let's do a different color. You had 3 waves up and you had 3 waves down, right? So then the idea is, well, that's just 1, 2. But where's 3? We don't go in 2 ways, we go in 3. The market moves in 3s and 5s. Right? 3s and 5s. So you need another move up like this. And this becomes a bigger 3. So that's exactly what I've been saying in my videos for a long time. That doesn't mean that's going to happen. Remember, this is not financial advice. I could be wrong, right? And what if I am wrong? What would be the alternative? I'm going to show you that. But first, you have a little A, a B, and a C. And this whole thing is a B wave, right? And then from there, it can morph into something like ADA, where you kind of, you're putting, and then you just break out, right? So you kind of just eventually break out. But a lot of times you can get 3 waves up, but then you can kind of come down into reaccumulation. So here's your retrace, right? So A, B, and then you can actually have C. That would be ultimate catastrophic. Right? But a lot of times when you go all the way up here, you don't have to necessarily go all the way back down, right? Like XRP didn't have to do that. So typically that involves reaccumulation, right? So something like this, where you have an A, a B, and then it kind of goes into a C, or even a triangle, right? Even a triangle would potentially work, like A, B, C, and then D, and then E. Actually, like A, B, C, D, and E. And it's kind of a contracting triangle like this. And then you break out. That's a long ways away. So I'm not on that camp yet. But the alternative to this would be A, there's your B, and this is 1, 2, 3. We're about to get a 4, and then go down for a 5, and there's your C. So you have an impulse, a wave 1, A, B, C, a wave 2, and then you go up for your wave 3. Now, that can still totally happen. Why? Because if Bitcoin decides to rampage to the upside and get that final leg at 130, 140, what does that translate into Theta? Does that mean Theta is just going to break the hell out? Or what if Theta just goes like this? And Bitcoin is already at 150K and Theta's only right there. That's going to be a problem. Because then that's going to tell me, well, now Bitcoin is finished. And once Bitcoin is finished, it's going to go down. But then once it goes down, it's going to create this 5-wave move. And then it for sure is going to be, well, hopefully for sure it's going to be over. But how could it be over if Bitcoin's just beginning its bear market? Well, that's the thing. If in that event, I don't think Bitcoin goes in a bear market. I think Bitcoin goes into a mid-cycle correction, and we'll talk about that. Meaning it's part of a super cycle. And what better time to have a super cycle than right now with President Trump, with a pro-Bitcoin crypto president, with regulations, with a stablecoin bill, with exposing the bank. I mean, this is the time to really have that super cycle come into play. Now look at Amazon. Amazon's been in a super cycle for the last 10, 15 years or more. So, but Amazon goes up slow and steady, right? Crypto goes up massively and then it crashes. So what I mean by a super cycle is if we put Bitcoin here, you could see Bitcoin has basically just went way up, right? But if Bitcoin's going to go into a super cycle, it doesn't mean it's going to keep going up. You still need a big correction, something like this, a 3-wave correction that maybe gets you right back down to here, right? So you have a top, and then you come down and you back test that top around, what is that? Maybe 70K, right? Between 60 and 75K or so, right? And then during that time, that is a massive, and people go, oh, that's a bear market. That's going to be a bear market. And it looks like a bear market, and people will most likely label it as a bear market. But it would most likely be a mid-cycle correction. So here's the first part of the cycle. Here's the second part of the cycle. And then you're going to get one more wave up. And that is the wave that totally catapults Theta, 80, everything into the stratosphere. Because the first part of this, right? So for example, if Bitcoin has one more push up to 50K, and I can't really draw it that much, but just know the line is bigger than that, up to 50K, that's not going to give us a lot of time for Theta, right? So let's say Theta just gets back up to here. Well, then that's, that's just what it is, right? And then maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Bitcoin goes into its mid-cycle correction while Theta is sort of consolidating, making another low, a new low, right, in its 5th wave. Once Bitcoin reverses, that's when Theta really rampages off of its 3-wave move. Now, that's the bearish idea short term, but extremely bullish long term. Right? Now, the alternative to that would be Bitcoin still gets its push up to 150 or so, but then instead of Theta just going up to here and then coming down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of that, what Theta does is it actually gets way back to the top, kind of flags out a little bit, and then keeps going. And it gets up to $8, $9. That's my target for Theta. That $7, $8, $9, $10 area, right? And then we'll talk more targets later, but this is it right here, right? So let's take this off, let's take that off, and let's zoom out a little bit. And yeah, so we would have, let's just put a polyline here. So sort of we need a 1, 2, right, 3, 4, 5, something like that, right? And that gets us up to that, $8, $9 area, right? And that's a proper retrace, a proper retrace. Because remember, I started my channel, for all the OGs out there, right there, when Theta was 64 cents. And basically the first video I said is, I think the bear market is over. I think this is Wyckoff, and I think that we're going to go into retrace. That's exactly what happened. But the retrace only got us to about $4. It was still technically a retrace because we met up with the bottom part of this range here. This range right here is the most important part of the puzzle, right? So we didn't quite get there. You can count these wicks right in here, and we hit it. But anyways, so that's kind of what it would look like, and it would probably happen a lot faster than that, But again, that doesn't, the way I've drawn it, that puts us all the way to next year. That's a year away. I don't know if Bitcoin has another year in its gas tank. So that's why I'm a little bit kind of, I've been studying the crypto for a long time. This is unlike any other cycle we've had. It's completely different. I don't care what anybody says, because you have Bitcoin literally at all-time highs, and you have Theta at all-time lows. So where's the disconnect here? Well, a lot of it has to do with Bitcoin people that sort of, and this is just conspiracy talking, but I'm sure they're putting a lot of pressure, because the Bitcoin guys, they have all the money, right? You talk to a Theta guy, or you talk to an ADA guy, or you talk to, even an XRP guy, they don't have a lot of money. I mean, they don't. Not compared to like the Winklevoss twins, some of those early Bitcoin guys. They got billions and billions of dollars. So that's a lot of influence that they can put on financial entities that will then advise the clients not to touch XRP, but only Bitcoin, right? So that's a conspiracy, but, there's other parts to it too, right? So a lot of it is, if Bitcoin is a risk asset and Theta and altcoins are extremely risk assets, then how come we are totally in two different worlds here, right? Because again, I'll put Bitcoin on the screen. Look at the difference here, right? Bitcoin rampaged to the upside, and Theta has a three-way pullback. So which one would I rather invest? Something that's way the hell up here, or something that's at support? I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer, right? But anyways, that's kind of a little something here. So again, I rant, but let's get to the analysis. The smaller time frame. So when we zoom in here a little bit, again, I think this is finished because remember, we had this wave up and this wave down. Now, when we were here and we got this wave up, there was a chance that it could have been over. We were looking for a three-way pullback. We didn't get it. What did we get? We got immediate push to the downside. But what did that do? That actually is a better thing because now it reduces the possibilities of what it is, because it's all about ruling out what it's not, right? And what it's not, or what it's not is, this is not 5 waves, right? So now we know this is 1, 2, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this is 4 and this is 5. So 1, 2, all of that's 3, 4, and 5 with bullish divergence on the daily, the 2-day, the 3-day, the 4-day, all the way up to the weekly chart. And I think even a little bit higher than that, we have bullish divergence. Look at that bullish divergence. That is major bullish divergence. That is very strong, right? And this goes up even on the 5-day level. You have bullish divergence, right? Let's see, does it go up to the 10-day? Even on the 10-day chart, you have bullish divergence, right? But now with all fairness, this is where it starts getting a little wishy-washy, because this close is actually lower than this close. So the RSI on a 10-day chart is a lagging indicator, right? So it's not really taking in this wick. So you can't really say that. So that's why I like looking a little bit less than that. And even on like the 4-day chart, you have the close lower, right? And you still have the bullish divergence. So I think this 5-wave move is finished. And now you can see we're starting to have a reaction off the low. Now, does this reaction only give us a retrace, right? Because here's the big step. And now when I talk about theta, I'm talking about all of the charts, not just theta, right? And we're going to look at other charts, but let's zoom in here and let's put it right there. So this is the big situation. What do we got to do? We got to break above this level right here. And I didn't even need the fibs to tell you that, but basically 90 cents, between 90 cents and $1, right? So let's zoom in here. Right. So when we looked at theta yesterday, it actually looked not quite finished. I think we were like right there, or right around here. And I basically said that this could either be a flat or it's a 3-wave move. And then you get 3 waves up and then you get 3 waves down. But the alternative, right, or the main idea was an impulse. I should say the hopeful main idea is A, B, C. That's a perfect flat. So you had a 1 and you had a perfect setup. Just like Bitcoin over here. Just like Bitcoin right here, right? So you had A, B, C. It was a perfect situation, right? So you had the big dump, you had that first 5 waves up, and then you ABC'd, right? So that's exactly, so you can say on the smaller time frame, ADA is like, or theta is like right there, or so. On the super small time frame. So if we zoom in here, right, and it's still not confirmed yet, right? We still are in this situation here. Now it looks really good. It could still be a pump and dump. There's a lot of shenanigans that happen, right? So it makes you feel bullish, it makes you feel bearish. But the real way that we're gonna get bullish is once we break above $1, basically this 90-cent dollar range. That's when you're gonna know, okay, there's a lot more legs. Why? Because you're breaking this high here, which is the 4th wave of this move down, right? So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have an impulse with a 3-wave pullback, it's a flat, and now you have another impulse today. I mean, this is a good thing. So again, like I said, markets can turn on a dime, right? So yeah, that's theta. We really want to see an impulse back up to here. Now, if theta gets back up to here and Bitcoin looks like it's over with, then it opens another possibility of that mid-cycle correction. So you see this shoulder right here? What if we got another shoulder while Bitcoin was creating a mid-cycle correction, kind of like a bigger ABC? Right, because remember, Bitcoin would already be in its bear market probably before theta had topped. Just like back over here. Bitcoin was well into its bear market after ALTS topped. Right? So if we go to Bitcoin now real quick, and Bitcoin dominance is a big deal. We're going to look at that. And we put on theta. You can see, look at this, right? See how Bitcoin goes first. Theta does nothing. Then once Bitcoin absolutely tops, and now it's in its bear market, that's when theta decides to blast off. And how long was that? right? So if we started on this candle and we go all the way to this candle, that was only 24 days, guys. That's all Theta needed, was 24 days. But honestly, I mean, that's not really part of the bigger cycle here, because it really started down here. But essentially, right, the big wave here started while Bitcoin was in distribution. But here's the thing. You can say, well, why isn't the altcoins moving? How come they're not mooning? How come they're at their lows? How come they're not doing anything? Well, maybe because Bitcoin isn't finished yet. We ever think about that? Even though it looks like it's almost finished, right? So once Bitcoin is finished, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's going to be like we're right in here. But then Bitcoin has to go sideways for a little bit. So then let's say it chops around a little bit right in here. That's when we get the alt season, right? Because, that's exactly what happened last time. We got the alt season while Bitcoin was just chilling out for a little while. And that gave us a lot of time. So, if you think let's pretend that we're like right here. And then you say, well, we only have a couple weeks left. Well, no, you actually have more than a couple weeks because you have all of this sideways chop. So you actually have more time than we think we do, right? So, yeah, so let's talk about the alt. If Bitcoin gets up here, how does that translate to the altcoins? Let's look at XRP because this is the one. And again, I think Theta will, real quick on Theta. If Theta simply just gets back to the top here, you're looking at almost over 400%. Okay, so if XRP had a 400% move, where's my other chart at? There it is. So if we had a 400% move on XRP, then how does that translate? So we already looked at all this. So let's take all this off the screen. Okay. XRP extremely bullish long term from this picture here. And we go up 400%. Well, look at that. That gives you right about that same target. So again, XRP is going to be more exciting, right, in the masses because it's breaking out new all-time highs. Oh my God, it's at $8, $9, $10, whatever. But it's really only 400%. But Theta can do 400% just getting back to its retrace levels. Now, I'm not saying Theta is better than X. I'm not saying, it doesn't matter. It matters about the chart, the percentages, the structure. And XRP has a way better structure because it has more structure, right? Again, you put Theta up on here. Basically, if you take Theta's entire existence right here, it still does not even come close to how big XRP's structure is. Look at all of that structure, right? So if this is your rise, here's your rise. Here's your crash. Here's your crash. Here's your retrace. Here, we don't even have a retrace yet. I mean, you can count this, but I think we still have A, B, C up here. And then you come down, and then you come down, and then you go sideways, and then you go sideways. And then you earn your stripes, right? XRP has earned its stripes, okay? Theta has not really earned its stripes. It has a couple, but not a lot, not like XRP. So, and how do you get your stripes? You need more structure. Each one of these legs is a support beam. That's 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 a support. You have all of these layers upon layers. It's like a cake, right? Where Theta just has a pump, a dump, and a consolidation phase. So it needs more development. Now, that when the time is right, Theta is going to most likely outperform, and not just Theta, but a lot of coins will outperform XRP, given that they have a smaller market cap and things like that. So, but the reason why I'm in XRP is because XRP is closer to the finish line than any other coin. Okay, Theta isn't there yet. So we're not in a rush when it comes to Theta. And when I say Theta, I mean a lot of these other ones. You can say AVAX. You can say NEAR. You can say ICP. You could say ADA and Polygon and HBAR and Chainlink and Litecoin. I mean, all of them, really. Maybe not Litecoin, but Litecoin is a different structure. Or even SHIB, right? I mean, SHIB is definitely going to be, I think, one of the better ones because of the way it looks. It's got a really tight base. It's got a really pronounced three-way pullback. You see clearly 5 waves. You don't have the strong divergence like you do with Theta, but SHIB is, in my opinion, a little bit maybe better in some cases because it's so much closer to the all-time high. I'm just looking at it like which coin has the best chance at going into price discovery, and then also which coin has the best chance at getting a higher percentage, right? Because, you know, if Dog Coin was going to give me more percentage than XRP and Theta combined, then I would just sell all my Theta and XRP and I'd say, screw XRP, right? I don't care. I want the dollar bills. I want the return on the investment. That's what I care about. And then eventually, I also do care. Like, I wish I can use my crypto, right? I wish I could go to a store and just use my crypto. I know you can get those debit cards and stuff, but why would I want to use it? Nobody wants to use crypto. Like, crypto is meant to be used, but nobody wants to use it because if you use it, what are you doing? You're giving it away, right? You're buying something with it, right? You go buy some lunch. Why would I use my crypto to buy lunch when I can use my paper dollars? Right? Because that lunch, just like the Bitcoin pizza, right? That pizza that dude spent like how many Bitcoins on? That pizza is like $1 billion or something. I don't know, some crazy number. So I don't want that to be me. You know, I pull into In-N-Out or something and I get a cheeseburger, and then, you know, 7 years later, I spent, you know, let's say I spent I don't know, a few, however many XRPs it would take. And then, you know, 10 years later, that XRP is now worth like, you know, $100,000. So that was a $100,000 cheeseburger you just had there. So that's why no one uses crypto for means of exchange, because they believe that why would I use it if it's going to go up in value? They hoard it. They hodl it. That's the point of it, right? But the real point of crypto is to actually use it. But we're not going to use it until we have something to use it on. And we don't want to do that because that's in competition for the dollar. Right? So, but that's where XRP is different. And that's where some of these other coins are different, right? Like Theta is bandwidth and stuff like that. It's not necessarily competing with the dollar. XRP is not directly competing with the dollar. Now, Bitcoin is competing with the dollar in a way. But XRP is used as a utility instrument for liquidity and things like that. But anyways, again, that's my third rant for today. So, all right, let's do a little bit of a rapid fire here. Again, really fast on the small time frames. Let's just look real quick. You know, basically we got this big wave and it doesn't look finished. It looks like maybe you got a little bit more. I mean, you're right at the verge here of getting a pump. So we'll see about that. Okay. XRP, we already looked at it, but the small time frames, again, it's XRP small time frames is in a different situation. Like Theta and SHIB are coming off a three-way pullback. A three-wave major correction, I should say. But XRP is coming in to also a three-wave pullback, but you also have all of this consolidation right in here, right? So as long as we hold this low, then we have a chance to break this high. And the reason I think we will break that high is because the recent price action we've been having has been trending or correcting to the downside. When you get a correction to the downside, you usually break out. Just like when you get a correction to the upside, you go down, right? So we're looking for that three-wave shape. We have three waves here. So you can see it very clearly. 3 down, you got 3 up, and you got 3 back down. 1, 2, 3. So 3 down. So you have 1, 2. Where's 3? We don't have it yet. So let's get 3 up. That's why I think we should get 3 up. So once we get up here, that's going to be the most dangerous place. Well, not as dangerous as down here, but it's going to be more dangerous because if we do get up here, well, you now only have 3. You need to turn this 3 into a 4 and a 5, right? And I never liked this wave here because I didn't know how to read it. I don't know. Is that an impulse, right? Because you could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's only 3 waves, right? So if that's only 3, then how does that really work if we get this pump? Like, let's say we get a pump up here. Well, that's 3 up, and you can even say 5 down, but it can't be 5. It would have to be 3 if that is a ABC. But if you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then basically you have 3, 3, and 5. So if that's 3 waves up, then you should come back down. So that's why every impulse has to start with 5. If this wave was 5 waves, it would be in a better, more confident position. But we've seen it before where we don't have that type of structure or we do have that type of structure where it leads into a big significant bull runs, kind of like down here, right? This only started out as 3. Look at this, 1, 2, 3. It was a 3-wave move. And then it looked like you had 5 waves down. Look at this, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you had 3 up and you had 5 down. And it looked like he was confusing, like, what the hell's that? And then it exploded up. So that's exactly, I didn't even know that. I just found that out. That's exactly what's going on here, right? You got 3 and then you got 5. So maybe this is the big moment. Maybe we're going to blast off this week. Maybe it's going to happen. Maybe we could finally be rich again. And when I say again, I mean, I mean, for some of us, we're going to be rich again. Because I was, well, not rich, but, you know, I had a lot of, back in 21 was the best bull market for me, right? This bull market has been good, but only for XRP, right? Not so much the other coins. So I'm kind of like, you know, it's not that much of a benefit. But 2021, I made a killing on Chainlink, VeChain, Theta, ADA, not XRP, just a little bit. And even though XRP was my biggest holding back then, and that was a mistake back then, one day we'll go over all the things that I wish you could. I mean, everything is hindsight 2020, right? So we just have to kind of forget it and move forward. So yeah, XRP is looking really, really, really good. I don't know if it's quite ready to go. You might have a little bit more shenanigans up here, especially because we haven't even gotten to the retrace levels yet, right? So the big area we need to get through is 250, right? That's what we needed to get up to. So, yeah, can we get to 250? We'll see. All right, so I'm almost at an hour mark. If you can hit the like button and subscribe, because I'm probably going to go over an hour. I'm pretty sure I will. And I think this is a very important video. Now, XLM, yeah, it looks like it needs a little bit of help. You know, you got an impulse, you got a 3-way pullback, but you didn't get away from the scene of the crime. I feel like you got to come down a little bit, and then you can get going. But then, all that's going to do is give you 3, right? We don't want 3. We want 4 and 5. So we're going to have some issues coming up, but I think we're in the right step, right? You kind of have a double bottom, boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 right? You're testing it up, you're testing it down. So you kind of need that third wave here to get that three-wave move. So that's kind of what I'm still thinking, right? Because the alternative would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But this looks so corrective to me. It doesn't look like it's going to break the low quite yet. I mean, it could still do it if it's a 1, 2, 1, 2, but I just, with where Bitcoin is at right now. So SHIB looks phenomenally good, way better than it did yesterday. Again, you have this impulse up. You have A, B, and C. I mean, it's perfect. It's like you can't. That's why I like SHIB, because it gives a lot of times it gives me really good structures. And then you can see 1, 2, 3. Let's get 4 and let's get 5. Kind of what I'm thinking there for SHIB. I mean, I think SHIB has the potential to be one of the better meme coins. Like, forget about Pepe. Pepe looks to me like it's so overvalued. There's just no structure for me on Pepe. And Doge, I think Doge glory days are, I don't know. I mean, I still think Doge is going to do well. I just don't think it's going to do that well. Now, the other ones I'm not sure about. I mean, there's a lot of other ones out there, like Bohm and Daw. I mean, there's too many of them, put it that way. I haven't even seen all of them. I kind of stick with the usual suspects, but lately I've been looking at this one, which is AXS Infinity. This coin right here was, I think, even better than Theta, because let's see, what's the percentage? Oh my God, guys. This thing went up more than any other coin. I think this was the biggest performing coin out of all the altcoins back in 21, 22, or 21. This thing went up 170,000%. To put that in perspective, if you put a couple $100 in, I mean, oh my God, you would have a lot of money. A lot. I mean, wow. And it only took, how long did it take? It took, I mean, from that peak, it took about a year. So that's 170,000% a year. Oh my goodness. That is absolutely insane. So now when we look at the chart, that was just wave 1. Okay. So we haven't had wave 2 yet. Where's wave 2? Where's wave 3? I mean, we don't have wave 3. So we have a wave 1. We have a wave 2. What do you think wave 3 is going to look like? All right, because we're at 239 right now. Okay, so if we just get back to the all-time high, I'm just looking at it. I don't know about the inflation and all that. Maybe we'll never get back to the all-time high because it has a lot of inflation. Or maybe I have to look at it. But if you just get back to the all-time high, you're looking at a lot. I mean, you're looking at like almost 6,000%. Now, there's no guarantee it's going to go there, but I think eventually at some point it will. I don't like this ABC. The C looks too small. The A looks too big. It doesn't have the right look to it, unless this is going to be like 1, 2, 3, and then we get 4, and then we get 5, right? The only way I see this working is if Bitcoin has that mid-cycle correction like we were talking about earlier, right? So if we put Bitcoin on the screen, and let's say Bitcoin has another push up to 150. Well, that would mean AXS or AXI would have a little bit of a bounce up, but then it would keep coming down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that little pump for Bitcoin to like 140, 150 would equal a pump for AXI up to about where it broke down, right about there. But that's only a 4th wave, and then you have the 5th wave, and then Bitcoin goes into a bigger mid-cycle correction, right? And then it goes up, and then it's more proportional, right? So that's just one way to look at it. But it is distorted because we're on log scale. So now look at the son of a gun. I mean, that looks like a complete dead coin, right? It looks like, why would you even want that? I mean, this thing pumped and then it dumped and now it's dead. That's how a lot of people see it. I don't see it that way. I see it as consolidating because I think, depending on what this crypto does, I think it's a gaming thing. Now, gaming tokens only work well if the economy is good, because if people don't have money to buy games, right? Or the opposite, if everybody's unemployed and everybody's at home playing video games, maybe that's the thing, but I don't know. So, but yeah, I think I'm looking at this coin. I bought a little bit of it. I've always wanted it, but I never bought it because it was so far out of my reach. But now I have the opportunity to buy it because, so I like it because, let's see, we have bullish divergence on the 5-day. It looks really, really, really good. We have, just like the rest of the market, right? The rest of the market, you had a 3-wave pullback. Now, when you look at Theta, Theta is actually stronger because Theta didn't go up quite as much, right? See, Theta also had that move up and it had a 3-wave pullback, but it landed at the low. This 3-wave actually took out the low. And why did it do that? Is it because this one's better and that one's worse? No, it's because AXS needed that correction because it went up so freaking much, I don't know if Theta went up 170,000%. Let me see here. I don't think so. So you can do it from the C19 low. Yeah, see, it only went up 40. Oh my God. That's a massive difference. AXS, I thought Theta was huge, right? It went up 40,000%, one of the biggest gainers. AXS went up 170,000%. That's insane. Come on. So anything that went up that much is probably going to have a lot of juice later on. It's probably going to take some time, but anyways, I thought I'd bring that one up. That one's definitely in my arsenal of charts here. So I think it's going to take a lot of work though, because number one, you just finished this wave. You need a little bit of a base. Then it's going to take a long time to get through these retrace levels. And then once you're back up here, once you make it back up there, then you have like a shoulder ahead. Maybe we get another shoulder here, and it's going to take even more time, right? And then eventually you can break out. And when you break out, you see this gap. So when you see this gap, you went straight up and straight down. So there's not a lot of there's not a lot of volume profile for the price above that $12 level, right? So if we get back up here and we break out of this line, we can shoot up very, very, very fast up to its 702 or whatever, around $60. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So yeah, you just got to buy low, and I think we are low. You got 5 waves, right? You touch the oversold level. Let's go to the weekly, right? You got bullish divergence on the weekly. I don't know what else you need here. So the thing is, this can go up in 3, and then can go down. It'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it's gonna go up in 5. You're gonna get a 3, and then come back up here. So which one's it going to be? We'll see. We are very close to finding out, I think. So, man, I wish I could go a little bit more in depth here. Dog had a big day. Every dog has his day, right? Dog looked pretty good. You had your impulse, and you had this big dump, A, B, C. It looked like a flat here. So A, B, C, a perfect flat, and now you're climbing. So the thing is, though, is this going to turn into a more complex B wave, not just for dog, but other ones too, because you can have A, right? And then this whole thing right here can go up and even break the high if it wanted to, and that could be your B. And then we still have to come down for C and then go up. So look out for something that becomes more complex, right? I don't like how this is going. It kind of, I think that's what's going to play here. I don't know. It's tough, but we'll have to see when it comes down to it. Boom. Very interesting chart. You got like a 1 2. This could even be a 1 2 1 2, which is even more bullish, or a 1 ABC 2, and now we're going up for 3. Kind of hard to tell right now. Theta looks interesting because you have a double bottom, and the double bottom came off of a 3-way pullback. So Theta may have bottomed here. And if Theta did bottom, and Theta is on the way up, you know, that's a long ways up. I mean, it looks like a disaster of a chart, but, you know, that's when you buy. That's when you step up to the plate, is when things look grotesque, right? So if we get back to the all-time high, I mean, that's only 1,300%. You know, you talk about AXS, that's 6,000%. And then when you look at XRP breaking above its all-time high, going all the way to $10, that's only 400%. Right? So, you know, you got to be smart with not just the coin, but the percentage is everything. AVAX, I think AVAX, ADA, XLM, XRP, Theta Fuel, Ethereum, I think they're all going to do well. HBAR, Algo, I think they're going to do well. But ICP, you know, so this one here still looks really good. You got your impulse, your 3-way pullback. You got 5 waves. This one didn't break the low, though, so I don't like it as much. So I feel like I need a little bit more here to give me a good feeling. But, you know, because all we have is a 3-way move so far. So we'll have to see how it continues to play out. Same thing with near, right? A, B, C, 1, 2. So Elon and Trump, I'm going to talk about that. So if you want to end the video now, you can. But before you do, real quick, Elon and Trump. Elon doesn't like that the bill got signed in. He is a conservative. He thinks we're going to bankrupt our country. He thinks Trump is going to bankrupt the country. He doesn't want to spend. He wants to pay off the debt. But Elon doesn't know what Trump knows, because Trump knows that it will never be paid back. This is what frustrates me about Elon. And I think Elon and Trump are faking the feud for other reasons, right? If you go to X22 report and listen to the recent report, go to Rumble, you'll understand the theory on why they're feuding. It's all optics, right? But let's say the feud was real. Why would Elon not want the bill to get passed? Because it's so porky, right? It's pork filled. It's all the fat. It's just waste. Okay, but that's why we have Doge. But also, Elon doesn't understand that Trump is trying to spend the money before it goes to zero, right? The Federal Reserve has an endless amount of currency, right? And we want to pay off the debt. That's the idea. But you're never going to pay it off. How are you going to pay off 30 trillion? You're never, ever going to do it. As long as you spend, you have to spend to keep everything alive, right? So what Trump's going to do, in my opinion, is he's going to spend, if I had $100, if I gave you $100 and you had to spend it in less than 10 minutes, or that $100 bill is going to burn up in smoke, what would you do? You would spend it, right? Before it blows. That's what Trump's doing. He's spending it before it goes up in smoke. That's what Elon doesn't understand. So he's trying to get everything passed. A lot of, and I think they should even spend more money. I think they should have went even bigger, like an infrastructure bill, and spent even more money, right? And redo the bridges and the roads and the airports and build our country up and make it nice and beautiful like Dubai, right? And make everything nice. And then people wouldn't like that because you spend too much money. But that's the point, right? You want to spend the money because what is more important? A paper dollar or what the paper dollar buys, right? What it buys, because it's physical, right? So I think Trump is trying to spend it while he can before we transition, because the whole point of what Trump's trying to do is get away from this central banking economy. We don't live in a people's economy. We live in a central banking economy, a fiat system. That's the system we live in. We don't want that system. We want a real money system, and that means gold. That means crypto, right? Taking away from the Rothschild central banking corrupt system, returning it back to we the people by decentralizing a lot of it on the blockchain, right? And then using gold as a backing so that you don't have to worry about, oh, are we spending too much money? Are we going over the deficit and all this crap? You don't need that, because everything can be intricated in the blockchain. Now, I'm not talking about CBDC. CBDC is corrupt and it's gangster money, right? Bankster money. We don't want that. We want real money. We want competing money. We want the dollar to do well. Americans have a luxury that the dollar is the most, it's the reserve asset of the world. So we're lucky in that. But are we really so lucky? Because to me, people struggling in the UK is the same kind of struggle in Alabama. It's the same thing. So passing the bill, I know why, like Ron Paul and all the gold bugs and Peter Schiff and those guys that they know a lot, but they really don't know anything. They don't understand Trump's strategy. They don't understand his genius on how he's trying to expose the banking system, right? He has a plan, and they don't understand the plan. And that's why they're saying the right things, but they don't get why he's doing it. The whole point of it is to transition away from the Federal Reserve. They're acting like Peter Schiff, Ron Paul. They're acting like we have to pay back the Fed. We have to live in the Fed's rules. We have to abide by what they say. We have to do with what they say. No, we have to destroy them because they destroyed us, right? It used to be in the 1950s, the dad would go to work and work a normal job, maybe a shop, maybe a shoe salesman, right? Maybe a landscaper, maybe a plumber, or just whatever. And he would have a whole house. He would have a car. He would have 2 cars. He would have a boat. He would have a motorcycle. And the mom would stay home and watch the kids. Now, today, you have mom and dad both working. And they are sometimes working 2 jobs. And they only share a car. They share 1 car. They never go on vacation. They're eating TV dinners, right? They are living in hell. What changed? What changed? The value of the dollar changed. That's the whole point of crypto. That's why we're here. That's why I have my channel. That's why we invest. Because the current system is stealing from you. You don't realize it, right? Because yes, you're making more money today than you were back in the 50s, but the money today is actually worth less than it was back then, even though it's more money. Why? Because of inflation. But the cost of living hasn't been matching up with inflation. That's why the 1950s were the best time for Americans, right? And then pre-1920 was also a really, really good time too for Americans. But today, it's not so good. You may think it's good. Oh, I got my apartment. I got my little house. I got my little car. I got my job. I got my girl. I'm happy. Yeah. Well, I don't think you realize how much more you could really have if you were getting paid properly. Now, you can't just raise the minimum wage because, that's going to cause more problems. So what's the problem? It's the money. It's the dollar. The US dollar is the problem. So how do you fix the problem? Elon Musk wants you to not spend, and he wants you to pay back he doesn't want to go bankrupt, but he doesn't understand. We are already bankrupt. There's no way we're going to pay it back. So we're living in a system where you can't do anything about it. So what is Trump going to do? He's going to take advantage of it, and he's going to spend like a mother. effort, right? He's going to spend as much as he possibly can while it's still worth something, so that when we transition to a gold standard, we are going to not have to give away our gold. Because let's say, like, for example, that's why he did all the tariffs and all the trade deals, right? There's no negotiation. He's giving you the term. It's 10%, pay it or shut up. That's the deal. There's no, and the reason why is because once we go to a gold standard, we cannot have a trade deficit. You know why? Because then if we are on a gold standard and we have a trade deficit, we are going to give away all our gold. We don't want to do that. We want to he who has the gold makes all the rules. That's what Trump said. He said it. He who has the gold makes all the rules. Who has all the gold? The USA, right? And all the gold in Fort Knox is there. And you know what? I think there's even more gold there than we think. And I bet there's more gold out there than we even possibly know. And I think that is, the gold's going to go up. But I think we have so much gold that, when we go to a gold standard, we're going to have the upper hand, right? So why do we need crypto? We need crypto for individual things, like Theta solves a problem. XRP solves a problem. A stable coin solves a problem. Bitcoin, it's a store of value. It's a hedge. But if you're hedging against a system that's going to be replaced anyway, then I don't see the point. Boom, boom, boom. You see what I mean? So, if Trump just can't take Elon and sit him down and be like, yo, Elon, this is what I'm trying to do, because does he really trust him completely? Like 100%? I don't know. I don't know if the feud is really real. I don't know if it's for optics. I believe it is. Because what did Elon say? He goes, I think they're feuding. You got to listen to the X22 report, but a lot of it has to do with like the EV mandate. Like there's a lot of things involving the EV stuff, but I'm not going to get into all of that. But anyways, man, Ethereum is looking really sexy. Look at this. 3-wave move. Impulse. 3-wave move. And then you have that reaction off of it. And all of this is coming off a 1-year 3-wave pullback. So yes, things take time. Yes, things can be frustrating. Yes, one day it can be down in the dumps and looking terrible. The next day it can be looking nice. Right? So that's why it's crypto. You got to keep your head on a swivel. Right? So I think this is the most exciting time in human history to be alive, because this is the moment where we have a revolution, right? And we're already in that process. But the real thing, right? Think about when Trump came down the escalator. Think about how many crazy things have happened since then. I mean, you have so many crazy things that has happened. The impeachment, the assassination, the Russia-Ukraine stuff, Israel, Iran. I mean, there's just so many things. COVID, right? All of these things. Why are all of these things all of a sudden happening? Because you have an entity fighting another entity, right? When before it was just one entity that made all the rules and they didn't have to worry about anything. So you're basically at war with a system, right? People say, oh, well, we're going to go to World War III. We're going to go to World War III. No, we're not going to go. We're in World War III. World War III is an information war. World War I, World War II, guns, bullets, bombs, right? World War III is cyber. It's information. It's psychological warfare, right? I'm not shooting you with a bullet. I'm shooting your brain with disinformation so that when a left-wing crazy lunatic hears Trump speak and they're freaking out and they're screaming at the top of their lungs, that's because the mainstream media, the Democrats, the deep state have put a psychological operation at work to destroy their minds by brainwashing them completely. That's why people have Trump derangement syndrome, because that's all they hear. Trump, Trump, Trump all day long. CNN, fake news, right? Just like my cousin. she is completely crazy. She doesn't understand, right? She is nowhere near the intelligence that is needed to understand what's really going on and why Trump does the things he does. And I don't blame Trump. I don't blame her. I don't blame even the Democrats. I blame the people who are trying to, well, the Democrats, a lot of them, but the people who are really trying to put disinformation out there, and like the Russia, every story they make is designed to make Trump look bad and to make him look evil like a dictator, right? So people, year after year after year, remember, it's already been 10 years almost. Well, what is it, like 4, 8, 9 years, right? So that's a lot of years of people, of the news recycling the same talking points over and over again. But I think, that's why I believe Joe Biden needed to be president in 2020 so that he can expose, right? I know, Trump says the election was stolen, and it was, but I think he was counting on them stealing it so that he can put the spotlight on Joe and the auto pen and all that, because we would have never known, right? And that's why everything is playing out the way it's playing out. So it's much better that Trump took his first term, paused, then took his second term, right? Because that allowed time, that allowed compare and contrast between the two presidents. So it should be a very exciting 4 years, right? Or 3.5, or, maybe even more than that. So I think a lot's going to happen. And again, that's why I think we could have a super cycle here, because if Bitcoin looks like it's at the end of its cycle, but the altcoins are at, like their lows, their lowest low, then, some of them, then how do those alts ever get back to their recovery points, right? Like, let's look at ICP here. And you can see we're pretty much at the lows, right? Or let's look at ADA, right? A little bit different. Total 3 is a good example. Total 3, though, is at the highs here, right? But like Theta and a lot of other ones are at the lows. So a lot of it probably would be XRP. You got H bar here, not quite at the lows. It's another level up, which is good. Chainlink. Let's look at our Chainlink. Remember, this was our thumbnail, right? So this was Chainlink. This was our thumbnail. And now you can see we actually got down to about that $12 area. So that was a flat, right? So A, B, C, and now you got the pump. So I think now the question is, is it gonna go up from here, or are we gonna kind of go up and then still kind of correct a little bit? So we'll see how it all continues to play out. Monero is actually looking good. I like the bottom here. I think I'm going to go ahead and snag a little bit of Monero up, because I think it's also getting ready to go. So anyways, kind of a long video, but it is what it is. So let's keep it going, and I will remember, nothing is financial advice. I could be wrong. I could be right. We'll see. But yeah, we definitely living in some very interesting times, and it all has to do with money, and it all has to do with paying back the debt, which we're never going to pay back, which is why we have crypto and gold, because gold and crypto is a weapon that the people can use against the banks. Because why do we need the banks? Why did we need the banks in the 1800s? Because that's all we had. We didn't have anything else, right? We had gold, but gold, wasn't easily exchanged. So you needed fiat, right? You needed paper. So that's where the banks come in. But now we have crypto. So why do we need banks? we have DeFi. What do you think Trump's sons, which are, if Trump's kids are investing into DeFi, then that's got to tell you something. You know what I mean? So why do we need banks? Why do you need a middleman? If two parties are doing $1 million in business, then that means the bank is going to take a cut. But if you had DeFi and you didn't have to trust the other person because everything was on the blockchain, you don't need to pay the middleman, right? Which is the bank. So that's the point, right? And then also taking back our entire monetary system. And that's why crypto and gold and Trump and everything is so important. And that's why we're going to continue to watch how the story unfolds. But anyways, I will catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.